Hey guys, what's up? Today I have something very different, something completely different from what I'm used to talking about in this channel. This is a huge request from a lot of you. You have been wondering for so long what are my favorite games that are not RPGs. So instead I'm going to talk about my favorite game that's not an RPG on every single console. At least on the consoles that matter to me. And with that clarified, let's begin! Alright, we're gonna start with the NES. The NES is the very first console that I owned when I was like 5 years old. Definitely my favorite on the NES, it's gotta be Xexis. Xexis is a hidden gem. A lot of people are not familiar with this game. It's one of those games that is a cross-genre. There's two genres in there. There's one mission, one complete and entire mission, platforming. You get power-ups, you get different types of attacks, and then you gotta find a door to defeat the boss and move on to the dungeon, which is where the real science fiction elements start showing up. Eventually you get to the end of the stage and you get to ride a ship, a small ship, and the game turns then into a shoot 'em up, a horizontal shoot 'em up, and it's great. The controls are great here, the graphics are fantastic, colorful, so charismatic, full of originality. The music, even though there's only like 5 or 6 songs, are amazing. It's got a great soundtrack and it's got great controls. The difficulty is just there. It's hard. The more you advance, the tougher it becomes. And until the very end of the game, it's a very enjoyable experience. I beat this game to death in my childhood days, and I think I beat this game a few years ago just to reminisce about how amazing this game it is. Xexis, my favorite game on the NES. My favorite game on the Super Nintendo that's not an RPG is gotta be Super Mario World. It's not really an original answer. A lot of people would have picked this game. It's so fantastic. To me, it's a much better game than Super Mario Bros. 3, which I love too, by the way. But this one, it was so great, so fun to play. A lot of secrets, lots of secret areas, lots of extra content, and the difficulty. Super Mario Bros. 3 was so difficult, I never beat it. But this one, it was challenging, alright, but it was balanced. So I beat the game, and I beat in this game, and the star levels, and the extra hidden levels, everything. I've done everything there is to be done in this fantastic game. Unfortunately, I never had a Nintendo 64. Some amazing games there, I gotta admit, but it just wasn't for me. So Nintendo 64, I won't be covering it. I think Mario Party 6 is a much better game, but honestly, you can't go wrong with any of the Mario Party games on the GameCube. So if I had to pick one, just for the sake of the matter that I own the disc of Mario Party 4, because these games are very expensive and rare nowadays, well, it will have to be Mario Party 4, my favorite game on the GameCube that's not an RPG. Now, when it comes to the Wii, I did exactly the same as with the GameCube. I focused way too much on its role-playing games, and I barely touched any other games from any other genre. I'm gonna pick New Super Mario Bros. Yes, believe it or not, I am a Mario fan. I may not look like one, but I am a big Mario fan. Not the biggest, but I do love Super Mario. And the New Super Mario Bros. Game on the Wii was just fantastic. I beat this game only once, and I gotta admit, it was so great because Mario 64, I didn't like it because I don't like the Nintendo 64. Mario Sunshine was a little bit of a disappointment for me, so when we finally got to the new main Mario game on the Nintendo Wii, I was so excited to play it because it looked in 2D, it played very well, the challenge was there, it was like reviving the old days with Super Mario World. New Super Mario Bros. On the Wii, fantastic game. That's probably and definitely my favorite game on the Nintendo Wii. Wii U is another console I really don't care about. I don't have one, I never owned one, and if I had to pick one, it would probably be another Mario game. How about Super Mario 3D Land? That's one of the very few games that are not RPGs that I played on the system, but to be honest, I don't really care about the Wii U. Now when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, it's called Blast Blue Cross Tag Battle. This is like a crossover between the characters from Blast Blue and characters from Persona 4 Arena and characters from this anime series called Ruby. I think there's also characters from this hidden gem on the PlayStation 3, 4 and Switch called Under Night in Birth, it's a fantastic game. But definitely my pick on the Switch is the Blast Blue Cross Tag Battle game because it's so much fun, it's almost perfection, its arc system works at its best, so many interesting characters to choose from, so many combos, so many ways to play the game. Out of all the Blast Blue games that I played, because I'm such a BlazBlue fan, I gotta go with that one. Not because it's a crossover and it includes characters from Persona 4 and RPG. No, it's because it just plays very well. So far, it is my favorite game on the Switch, and I play the Switch version the most thanks to playing online with my friend Oscar, but you can't go wrong with either version. Alright guys, let's go portable now. We're gonna start with the Game Boy. And for the Game Boy, I have such a weird ass choice. And I'm talking about Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 2, the second one. I never owned the first one or the third one, and I never played them until I was much older. So the one that I was playing the heck out of it on my Game Boy was precisely this game, and I love it to death. I beat this game like 5 or 6 times. It was all I had back then. For a while, then I got into other games like Killer Instinct, Donkey Kong, and eventually some RPGs like the Final Fantasy Legend. But this was part of my childhood. I love this game to death. Amazing game, amazing puzzles, amazing soundtrack as a matter of fact. Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle, I don't care what people say, I love it to death, and it's my favorite game, non-RPG, on the Game Boy. Game Boy Advance is a console that, just like the GameCube and the Wii, I focused almost 100% of its RPGs. But I do have one game. It's called Guardian Heroes Advance. It's a sequel to the Sega Saturn game, which was also a beat 'em up. It influenced the heck out of another game called Code of Princess. But really, you can't go wrong with that version. Play it if you have it. It's a great beat 'em up on the Game Boy Advance, and that's probably my favorite game, non-RPG, on the system. Now for the Nintendo DS, I know, I'm sorry, it's true, I'm not kidding, I'm not trolling you. This is my favorite game on the Nintendo DS. That's not an RPG. I don't care, it was so addictive to play. The first time I played this excellent game was on the computer. I beat the heck out of that version, and then eventually I got a Nintendo DS back when I had my store. And back then I didn't have an R4, I didn't have any other RPGs. All I had was Plants vs. Zombies, and I gotta admit, I was blown away. I loved how addictive and immersive this game is. I know it's overrated as hell, and even your grandparents have played this game to death, probably. And I'm in. I agree with them. Welcome to the club. I love this game to pieces. It is my favorite game on the Nintendo DS. Not kidding. Now for the Nintendo 3DS, I gotta pick another Mario game. Mario 3D Land, the first one. It was great, it was a great adventure, it's tough as hell, I never beat the game, it's like each stage adds something different. It's a great game, check it out, Super Mario 3D Land, a great game, and probably my favorite game non-RPG on the 3DS. Now the mighty PlayStation, I love the PlayStation like a lot of you, and I gotta admit, I did play a lot of games, non-RPGs on the system, and it was so hard to choose one for me. My favorite is probably Crash Bash, because I played this game a heck of a lot with my sister by myself, and I never beat it. It's so hard because the game forces you to play the mini games over and over again, and that's okay because they're so good and addictive that you don't care. You get frustrated each time you lose, but 10 seconds later you're already there back at the game, back at the freaking mini game to try to beat it. It's such a fantastic game and I love it to pieces. Played with my sister, but it's so hard because the game requires you to play the hard modes or the challenge modes of each mini game, and that can ruin the experience. But if you play this game with somebody else, I guarantee you're gonna have a lot of fun. Crash Bash, definitely my favorite game on the PlayStation. That's not an RPG. Now the PlayStation 2 is my favorite console of all time, you guys know that already, but I gotta pick Hunting Ground. This is such an underrated game, probably famous because it's one of the rarest video games on the PlayStation 2 currently. So you play as Fiona here, and she wakes up in this cryptic, extremely ginormous and horrible castle, and she's gotta find a way to escape. She makes friends with a dog that also seems to be lost in there, and you're gonna control Fiona to control the dog to fight her pursuers, which is one pursuer per stage, for so to say, for a certain part of the castle and the dungeon. And this relationship between these two characters, this tension, this incredible tension, this huge amount of jump scares, this stress you're having as a player is so satisfying, so addictive. Like, you get so into this game that you can't let it go once you start playing it. It's such a survival horror masterpiece. This no wonder it's one of the rarest games on the system. Unfortunately, it's so damn expensive, but if you can find a way to play it, I strongly recommend this game. It is a masterpiece, a great game, and definitely my favorite game on the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 3, once again, is a console where I did play a lot of games that are not RPGs, Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. I love these games to death. Fighting games is my second favorite video game genre, so of course I had to go with my two favorite fighting games of all time. You guys know me, I'm not the biggest Persona 4 fan, but I am a fan nonetheless. I love the game, and I love these two fighting games, but more because they're fighting games, because they play so well, and because Arc System Works is such a genius company for fighting games in 2D. And the story in these games, well, the story in the first game is amazing. It plays like a visual novel, more so, way more so than the BlazBlue games. It gives you the feeling as if you were playing precisely a visual novel sometimes, and it has such an amazing story with a new main character, Labyrinth. I love her to death, and she has such an amazing background and an amazing story. The second one, it was all convoluted. They tried to mix a lot of characters, and the story wasn't that interesting anymore, but it is a better fighting game. There's a little bit more combos, the graphics are a little bit better, so as a fighting game, it is slightly better than the first game. Overall, these two games are fantastic. I can't decide between the two, so I'm gonna go with both of them as my favorite games on the PlayStation 3. On the PlayStation 4, it was so hard to pick between these two. Little Nightmares, and also there's A Plague Tale Innocence. It follows the tale of Amicia and her brother Hugo, her little brother, and takes place during the Inquisition in France, and they're trying to reunite with their mother during these harsh times of Inquisition. Like, it plays almost as if they were in a wasteland with only bad guys everywhere trying to catch them, trying to capture them. The main character, the girl, she plays a little bit like Metal Gear, a little bit, because there's a lot of stealth involved. You gotta hide from the enemies and then attack them from afar with stones, throwing stones. And then the little kid, he has like a mysterious powers. He can control the rats, but that's pretty much late in the game. Most of the game you gotta run away from these rats and protect yourselves from the rats and find a way between them so you can just move forward with your journey. It's such an emotional journey, an emotional adventure. I totally recommend it. Very dark, very interesting, and very unique. A Plague Tale, definitely my favorite game, non-RPG on the PlayStation 4. Now, I don't have a PlayStation 5 yet, so let's move on to the portable systems, which are only two, the PSP and the PS Vita. For the PSP, I also have such a weird-ass pick. Worms, Open Warfare, the first one. Man, what an amazing, overly addictive, stupid-ass game. I love it to pieces. This is one of the most played games in my life. Like, I put so many hours into this game, just replaying the free missions over and over and over again. Back in my days at the store, when it came to the PSP, all I had was a bunch of RPGs, all of them great. But then when it came to non-RPGs, Open Warfare was my jam. I was playing this game so much. It was all about just turning on the PSP, played a couple of free missions for half an hour, and that was it. And I was doing that every day, rinse and repeat. And today, I still go back to it over and over again just to replay a couple of missions, just to relax, to stay away from all the other amazing adventure and RPG and fighting games. Just to have a quick two battles between these stupid, cute-looking worms. I love this game, my favorite game on the PSP that's not an RPG. Last but not least, the PlayStation Vita, such an underrated portable system, probably my favorite portable system so far. Danganronpa, Ultra Despair Girls, another episode. And I love this game, and it's great. The controls are kind of clunky, and so is the camera, and it pisses you off. But I don't know, there's something about this game. It has a lot of personality and a great cast of characters. Like Toko, she makes me laugh a hell of a lot. And all the situations these girls get into, all the weirdness of the game, it's such a unique game. You're not gonna find any game similar to this one. And no, it's not a visual novel, even though it has a hell of a lot of dialogue and some small RPG elements. This game is its own thing, a third-person shooter / hack and slash. Weird game, unique, very good, and it is my favorite game on the PlayStation Vita so far. Alright, we're gonna start with Sega now, and to be honest, the first Sega console that never came out of Japan, I've never played it. Then there's the Master System, and honestly, I don't really give a damn about the Master System. I never owned one. And for the Sega Genesis, I'm gonna pick Streets of Rage 2. I love beat 'em ups. It's probably my third or fourth favorite video game genre that's not RPGs. Streets of Rage 2, such a great game, strong personality, fantastic music by Yuzo Koshiro, amazing gameplay, amazing controls. It's a game that you can just go back to it over and over again and never get tired. Streets of Rage 2, definitely my favorite game on the Sega Genesis. The Sega Saturn, I've never owned a Sega Saturn. I barely touched one. The very few games, non-RPGs that I played on the system, one of them is Guardian Heroes. I think that will be my pick, but I've only played that game for like a couple of hours. But if I had to pick one, Guardian Heroes. Now the Dreamcast is a console that I never owned, but I did play a lot of games there. The one that stood out to me is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think it's a definitive version of the game. I just prefer the PlayStation 2 version just because of the controller. I don't like the controller on the Dreamcast. But okay, I think it's a great game and that will be my pick. Microsoft, the Xbox, the first Xbox, I don't really give a damn about it. My pick will be Enslaved for the Xbox 360. Such a great game. You control this character called Monkey and you have like a party member who joins you. You can't control her, but she can help you in a lot of dangerous situations. So it's an adventure game with some small RPG elements. You get better the more you fight and the more you advance. It's this post-apocalyptic world where there's barely any living humans alive. There's just robots everywhere, and it's such an amazing story. The relationship between these two protagonists is one of the things that stand out a hell of a lot in this game. There's also, imagine just that relationship taking place in this weird-ass world with such an intellectual and extremely well-written plot. I can't believe it, man. When it comes to storytelling, it's a great game. The controls are great. Sometimes they can be clunky as hell depending on the mission, because you not only have to fight the enemies with the giant stick or a tube or whatever the hell that is, you also need to like progress, climb things. There's some platforming involved, some weird ass missions where you gotta race or ride. Everything in this game. It's a little bit of a cross genre, but trust me, Enslaved Odyssey to the West, it's almost a masterpiece. I really recommend this game, people. Definitely a hidden gem, or more like an underrated game on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. And honestly, you can't go wrong with either version. I'm gonna pick this guy for my 360 favorite game. Last but definitely not least, the Xbox One. Little Nightmares, a survival horror / environmental puzzle in 2D with platforming elements. Another one of those weird experiments by this indie studio from Sweden. Amazing game. You control this little girl called Six. There's an explanation later in the game why she's called Six, but you know nothing about her or why she's there or the story, what the game is about. You know nothing. The game throws you in completely blind, and obviously you gotta escape from there. Where? At first it's like some ginormous place and you don't know what the hell that is, but eventually you find out you're not just some place, you're in a ship. And little by little, the story starts unfolding as you move on and solve these amazingly very well thought puzzles. It's such a great game, so dark, cryptic, creepy. I love it to death. This is a great game, people. Even if you don't like environmental puzzle games or survival horror games, the mix between these genres together, it created a masterpiece. I strongly recommend this version, either the PlayStation 4 or the PC version or even the Xbox One version, which is the very first one I played, and that's my pick for that console. So that's it for this video, people. Those were my picks. Those are my favorite games on every console that matters to me. I also could have chosen the TurboGrafx, but I barely touched the system, so that's why I didn't talk about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!